So, chances are you've heard of the IB, the International Baccalaureate. You probably know it as this, super rigorous high school program. But what is it really? Because it's so much more than just a list of hard classes. It's actually a complete educational philosophy. Today, we're going to peel back the layers of that onion and get to the core of what makes the IB tick, from its structure all the way to its ultimate goal for the students it teaches. And to really get the why behind the IB, you have to start with the problem it's trying to solve. This quote, I think, just nails it. We're living in this world of insane pressure and competition. So the question becomes, how do you educate young people for a future that's incredibly complex and demanding without completely burning them out? The IB's answer is an entire system that's built to be holistic, meaningful, and really focused on skills. So, where do they even begin? Well, it all starts with a very specific, comprehensive structure. You can think of this as that first foundational layer of the onion. It's the framework that's designed to make sure students get both breadth and depth in their learning. Now, this isn't just a menu of classes you pick and choose from. It's more like a balanced diet of knowledge. Students have to take one subject from each of these 6 groups, which guarantees they get a wide view of the world, everything from science and math to the arts. But the real secret sauce, the thing that holds it all together, is the core. This is where students write a massive 4,000-word independent research paper. That's the extended essay. They take a whole course called Theory of Knowledge, or TOK, where they literally question how we know what we know. And they connect everything they're learning back to the real world through CAS. Those 3 things are what transform this from a bunch of courses into one single integrated experience. Okay, so that's the what of the IB. But what about the how? How is all of this actually taught in the classroom? This is where we peel back that next layer, and it's a pretty huge shift away from what you might think of as traditional teaching. And this, right here, just sums up the change perfectly. The teacher's role literally flips. They move from being the sage on the stage, the expert at the front of the room who has all the answers, to being the guide on the side. Their job isn't to just lecture and dispense facts anymore. It's to create a process, to facilitate, to help students discover that knowledge for themselves. And that whole approach has a name. It's called inquiry-based learning. The fundamental idea here is that the student is in the driver's seat. So instead of a teacher saying, okay, chapter 1, here's what you need to memorize, they're asking, what are you curious about? What do you want to find out? It completely changes the game from being about memorizing answers to being about the skill of asking really good questions. And this isn't just a free-for-all. It follows this really powerful cycle. It all starts with that spark of curiosity, the inquiry. That naturally leads to action, where students go out and investigate, experiment, and try things. And then, and this is the most important part, they have to reflect on what happened, which of course sparks new questions. And the whole cycle begins again, each time going a little deeper and building an understanding that really sticks. All right, so we've got the structure and we've got the teaching method. The next layer of this onion is what I like to call the toolkit. These are the specific, transferable skills the IB is trying to build. And these aren't just for passing a test. They're skills for life. These are the 5 approaches to learning, or ATL skills. Now, the really crucial thing to understand here is that these aren't taught in some separate one-off life skills class. No, they are woven into the very fabric of everything. So when you're writing a history essay, you're not just learning about history. You're actively practicing research and communication skills. A group science project isn't just about science. It becomes a real-time lesson in social and self-management skills. The subject matter itself becomes the training ground for these absolutely essential life skills. So why this massive focus on skills? Well, it's because the whole point is to move students away from being these, passive buckets, just sitting there waiting for information to be poured into them. The IB wants to empower them to actually take charge, to be proactive, and to truly own their education. And the end result of all this focus on skills is what educators call a self-regulated learner. A great way to think about it is, it's like teaching someone how to be their own coach. They don't just sit and wait for instructions. They know how to set their own goals, how to find the motivation to get going, and, this is key, how to figure out what to do when they get stuck. And that
Right there is the ultimate toolkit for succeeding in university, the modern workplace, and pretty much life in general. Okay, so how does all this, the structure, the teaching style, the skills, how does it all come together in the real world? Well, it converges in one of the most essential and maybe one of the most misunderstood parts of the IB, the CAS program. That stands for Creativity, Activity, and Service.
Right off the bat, this is not just about logging volunteer hours to get a credit. The program's actually evolved way beyond simple service learning to focus on something much deeper: genuine community engagement. The key shift in thinking is moving away from a one-way street of "I'm here to help you" to a two-way relationship that is reciprocal and benefits everyone who's involved. And just like everything else in the IB, this engagement isn't random. It follows that same purposeful cycle we saw in the classroom. It kicks off with preparation and inquiry so students can truly understand a community's needs, not just assume they know what's best. Then, they analyze what they've learned to form a plan, take action, and finally, they share what they experienced, closing that loop and reflecting on the impact they had.
Look, I know this all sounds great in theory, but it can still feel a bit abstract, right? So let's make it real. Let's look at a concrete example to see how all these different pieces actually click together for a real student.
This is such a perfect illustration. So you have a student who connects their physics class with their personal passion for martial arts. They don't just do martial arts for their activity hours. They actually apply Newton's laws of motion to analyze the techniques. But then they take it a step further. The outcome isn't just for them. They create an instructional video to help their peers improve. See what happened? This one project synthesizes their academic knowledge from physics, their personal passion and activity, and a genuine contribution, a service to their community. It's all woven together. But it's not always that straightforward. And the IB itself is very aware of the potential problems here. This is a really powerful quote from a recent graduate, and it highlights a huge ethical question. What happens when the project is over and you just leave? When you engage with a community, you're creating real relationships and real responsibilities. And this really gets to the absolute heart of it. CAS is designed to be way more than just a task you check off a list. It's supposed to force students to grapple with these really complex, messy ethical questions about their own role, their responsibility, and the actual real-world impact of what they do. The IB's answer to this huge ethical challenge is a skill they call critical reflexivity. Now, if regular reflection is thinking about what you did, reflexivity is thinking about why you did it that way in the first place. It's about questioning your own biases and assumptions and seeing your small action within a much, much bigger picture of social and ethical issues. It's the intellectual muscle that turns a simple experience into genuine, responsible learning. So after peeling back all of these layers, the structure, the teaching methods, the toolkit of skills, the real-world action, what's the end game? What's the final goal? What kind of person is this entire system trying to create? It all leads to this: the IB learner profile. These are the 10 human qualities that the whole program is aiming to develop. And now you can see how every single layer we've talked about feeds directly into these. That inquiry cycle, it builds inquirers. The CAS experience, it fosters students who are caring and reflective. The entire approach challenges them to be risk takers. This really shows you the ultimate ambition of the IB. The final product isn't a test score, it's a type of person. And that really just leaves us with this final thought to chew on. The whole IB system is a massive, ambitious attempt to answer that very question. It's proposing that a true education doesn't just build your knowledge. It builds the skills, the mindset, and the ethical awareness you need to navigate a really complex world, and hopefully contribute to it in a meaningful way. Thanks for joining us on The Explainer.